Alright, we are back and we're here to make crackers, something that you will be very familiar with if you've had any Monday night dinners with us. And you will also know if you've had crackers at Monday night dinner that I never make them quite the same way twice. In general, I don't usually work from recipes and I always change things a little bit depending week to week. So this is sort of a rough recipe. I will give you a written version, but I'm going to kind of eyeball it and feel it out as well. And this is also a very flexible recipe, so it's something where as I go along I'll explain some ways that you could sort of tweak it or alter it or change it. So the basic recipe calls for some flour. So we're going to take this entire bag of flour and pour it in here. Nice and easy. Okay, I don't have to measure, I'm just basing everything off the flour. How much is in a 5-pound bag? And then next I'm going to take this cornmeal, this white cornmeal, and based on the amount of flour we needed, I'm going to put 3 cups of cornmeal in. So if you're making a normal amount of these crackers, the recipe calls for 3 cups of flour and a half cup of cornmeal, so about 1/6 as much flour to cornmeal. Alright, then we need some baking powder, and usually I will write an amount in the recipe, but usually for a 3-cup recipe I just do about a tablespoon, so I'm just going to put about a 1/4 cup in here. That should work. And then we want some salt. And for the salt, it should be about, for this amount, like 3 tablespoons. Should be pretty good. 3 tablespoons, okay. And then I'm also going to put in this case, some sumac. Sumac is a really nice herb that gives a kind of tart flavor to things. I like it quite a bit, so I'll put some sumac in. And then we'll also put some of this berbere, which is kind of a smoky red pepper that was in some of the other things we made, so we'll put a little bit of that in the crackers too. You can vary it up with different spices, herbs, things like that. There's not really a right or wrong answer to those things. But anyway, I'm just going to mix this now, just trying to get everything combined, all the dry ingredients combined. If I might add, these crackers are super easy to make. You'll see in a second that this is a really simple process. So you just take all these dry ingredients, get them all together, and you could make like a little well in the middle if you want. It doesn't really matter, it'll come together in the end. So now, got all those dry ingredients in there, so now I'm going to I took the oil that I had used to cook those peppers in earlier, because it's all the same flavors and it's going to be the dip that goes with the crackers. I just got some of the residual oil because it tastes delicious. And then I'm going to add a bunch more oil. The recipe calls for 1/3 cup of oil for the 1/2 cup of liquid, but I've found over the years that I prefer to do closer to a 1/2 cup of oil for the 1/2 cup of liquid in the recipe, mainly because I think the crackers are a little bit tastier and more kind of buttery, but you can sort of decide how much you want to do, and you can do any sort of fat. In this case, these are vegan, the way that I'm doing it today, due to the fact that I'm using almond milk rather than milk or goat milk. There are times when I'll use other fats or other liquids. For example, I've done this with chicken fat or duck fat. They're really good. If you don't care about being vegan or vegetarian, and likewise, you can do it with goat milk. Goat milk and duck fat is a particularly luxurious version of these crackers, but oil and almond milk is just fine, and that's what we usually do for Monday night dinner. So I'm putting the oil in here. And then now let's get our almond milk, and I have the unsweetened almond milk. I don't want to bring any sugar or anything into this. And so we're going to make sure we have 6 cups of that. I'm making a huge amount because I want to make sure all y'all get your cracker dough. So let's see. So we got to get to 6 cups here. So that's 2 more cups. Nice thing about making a big batch is that the amounts are a little bit forgiving. Alright, and then I'm going to put a little bit of tahini in there. It's a secret ingredient, certainly not necessary as an ingredient, but I like it and it tastes good. So put a little tahini, not a lot in there, just a little. Okay, so I've taken all these and now I'm just going to mix. I'm just going to get it, let it come together. It should come together. I gotta get down to all that flour. Sometimes the flour, especially with a big batch like this, the flour is in a, difficult to get to place here in this bin. So just pull it all together. It should come together fairly easy. It doesn't really take a ton of kneading, this dough, or a ton of coming together. It really just comes together real nicely, and you just gotta pull all that flour in. That's the thing, because the flour gets stuck in the corners of a big square bin like this. I think it's probably best if I were to use a round bowl. If I was at DDH, I'd be doing this in a round bowl, but I have very limited counter space, and I don't have a big round bowl, so I'm just going to do it in this square bin, and I'm going to take the dough and just kind of use the dough to pick up itself if it's getting messy up on the upper corners or if it doesn't seem integrated in certain places. I still have flour in the corners, believe it or not. That's not come into the dough yet, but if you're doing a smaller batch, this comes together right away. It's just going to take me a little bit longer here with this amount of dough that we have. So while I'm doing this, I'll say, because I have a little bit of downtime while I'm mushing this dough around, that I'm really excited to talk with everyone tomorrow afternoon. I've been really missing Monday night dinners and missing the DDH community, and I've heard that a lot of people have been missing Monday night dinners. For those of you who have never had Monday night dinners, it's a really wonderful thing, and I wish we had it this year. So I'm excited to talk with all of you tomorrow, share stories, reminisce, and answer questions either about the now 10 or 11 years I've been Monday night dinner chef, except for a few there in the middle where I wasn't in Chicago, or answer questions you have about cooking things and just sort of share some experiences. So anyway, we've got this dough and we've basically got all the flour integrated now. Get everything together, and it looks like relative to usual, this came out pretty darn well. I think it's a little bit on the oily side, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted to put a little bit extra oil in so that they're going to be nice and luscious, these crackers. That also means that in some ways it's a little bit coming apart, the dough. Like, it's not going to be quite as sort of fully together as a bread dough. That's okay. It'll go off just fine. And it'll still taste good if the crackers have a few wrinkles in them. So anyway, we've got your cracker dough now, and you can take some of it and just kind of smush it in between your hands a little bit if you want to work it a little more and knead it on the counter. So then all we're going to do when we're ready to bake it off, just take the rolling pin, roll it out, and bake it off. And I'll show you a couple of them. I'm not going to bake very many of these off now because I want you all to have the dough ready to bake off whenever you want the crackers fresh, but I will bake a couple off and show that to you in the next and last video, which will have to do with finishing making the dip, and then I'll show you how I bake off the crackers. All right, see you soon.